Hello students, good afternoon. Let us start the class of ITC now. As we have finished the general curriculum which was meant for this particular semester, in the next few classes let us have the revision right from the beginning. Now after this revision is over, let me go back to those modules where I had left out the additional exercises and let me cover those exercises also. So just to go back to the beginning now, we have been starting with information theory and coding in the beginning, and in the module 1 we had that introduction. Just to recall a few things, whatever you don't know is information, whatever you know already is knowledge. In the sense, whatever is already there in the memory, that is called knowledge, and whatever is going to be freshly input into the memory, that is called information in general. Again, we have three domains wherein we say cognitive domain, affective domain, and psychomotor domain. To use the psychological terms, cognitive domain means cognition. Cognition means storing something into memory after understanding the same. In fact, if you understand something, you will remember it for the longer period. If you do not understand, then you will have to make a bigger effort to remember that. So that way, that is cognitive domain. Then we have something called affective domain, means whatever is there in the memory, that will influence our feelings, it will influence our behaviors. That is called affective domain. And there is something called psychomotor domain. Psychomotor means whatever is stored in our memory, when we utilize it for some activity, some physical activity, using our motor organs. Psyche means mind, motor means your motor organs. Motor organs are basically our speech, our legs and our hands. As you already know, we have 5 sense organs. We already have 5 motor organs also. To tell them in the Sanskrit terminology, Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, Upastha. These are called motor organs. Means speech, legs, hand, and the 2 excretory organs, they are called motor organs. By means of them, we perform some activity through our physical body. So that activity happens by means of the feelings which we have. That is called affective domain. Why am I telling you all these psychological terms? Just to revise the meaning of information here. That's all, nothing else. So human beings' abilities are basically of 3 types, namely cognitive domain, affective domain, psychomotor domain. Cognitive means understanding and remembering. Affective means whatever we understand, we remember, that is going to affect our emotions, our feelings, our behaviors, our character, our basic nature. And based on that, we involve in physical activities. For example, when we communicate with each other, we use the speech only. So that way, these are the 3 domains: cognitive, affective, psychomotor. Now to tell a little more about these 3 domains, before proceeding further with the revision, the cognitive domain is associated to knowledge, the psychomotor domain is associated to skill, and the affective domain is associated to attitude. Again, human beings will have these 3 basic attributes or basic circles, or we represent them through circles, or we represent through 3 edges of a triangle, saying knowledge, skill and attitude. Now theoretical part is basically knowledge, practical part is basically skill, and the learning part is basically attitude. Which means when you theorize, when you think, when you evaluate, you will remember, but when you actually perform an activity, then also you remember. And ultimately, both these happen only if you keep learning. So, attitude is the first part. As long as possible, throughout the life, we have to keep learning. Right now, you are learning only the technical part of a course. Otherwise, all of us are learners lifelong. So, all of us should have that learning attitude. Then, accordingly, whenever we learn, we will have knowledge. Knowledge is nothing but stored information. And using that knowledge, we can involve in the activities. That is the practical part. At times in the educational field, practical part and the theoretical part go hand in hand. For example, your lab practices and the theoretical discussions go hand in hand. They have to go together. Again, whether practice should come first, theory should come next, or theory should come first, practice should come next, is a debatable issue. Sometimes some lab practices happen first, then you will understand them in the theoretical class. It also helps. Or else, sometimes you understand the theoretical part, then you involve in the lab practices. That also helps. Which one should come first, which one should come next, we don't know, because they have to go hand in hand. For example, you start learning the driving of a car first, then you learn more about the engine. That is one approach. Another approach is, first you learn about the complete engine's construction, its functionality, then you start driving the car. That also helps. Or else, you drive also, you learn also together. That is much better. So, whether theoretical part should come first or practical part should come next, or they should be reverse order, we really don't know. Ultimately, the purpose is to learn and to relearn and to remember and to apply it in life. So, that way, learning attitude, then knowledge, and then skill. These are the three sides in a triangle for a representation. So, that is how we relate a knowledge, skill, attitude with the three domains, that is cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain. Now, I can say that all these three together can form an aptitude. Knowledge, skill, and attitude, or cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain together is going to be a personality. Similarly, knowledge, skill, and attitude is going to be an aptitude or the ability of the person. Coming back from the psychological aspects, back to the technical aspects. What is information? Information is whatever we did not know till now, and now we know. What is knowing? Knowing is understanding as well as remembering. Only understanding is done. If it is not remembered, that is not of any use. Similarly, whatever is remembered, if it is not understood, that is also not of any use. Whatever is understood and remembered together, that is called as knowledge. With this brief revision of what is the meaning of information, now let us see in module 1 what all we learned. What is information theory here? Information theory again is more of cognitive domain. In most of the cases, there cannot be a practical aspect in the beginning itself unless some basics are understood. For example, when Isaac Newton, who was a priest in a church, he was sitting below an apple tree and he saw the apple falling down. When he saw the apple falling down, one apple fell on his head only, they say. When one apple fell on his head, he kept on thinking more about why apple falls down or why anything else falls down. And if it is falling down, whenever we throw a stone also, it falls down, means there is some force which is causing the objects to come back on the surface of earth. Which means there is some force which is pulling everything to the center of the earth. That is why he theorized a lot about this particular force, and then he called it as a force of gravitation. Of course, Isaac Newton did not invent gravitation. Gravitation was there much before him also. Gravitation has been there since time immemorial. But he gave a technical part to gravitation. Actually, much before Isaac Newton understood gravitation, in the Indian counterpart, in the Veda, there are 4 Vedangas called Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Jyotisha, Chandas. Jyotisha, astrology, is basically a documented study of the movement of the planets and the satellites. So that way, I should again say that much before Isaac Newton had understood all these things, there were people who were seers or saints who had understood all these things much before. That is how they had started counting the time, and they had documented all these measurements of time in the form of 12 months, 30 days in a month, full moon day, new moon day. All that was a very good calculation. This was existing much before Isaac Newton also. But we should give credit to Isaac Newton for one thing, that gradually his theorization and his expression of gravity led us to launch satellites, right? Isaac Newton defined the acceleration due to gravity, and because of which he found out if a stone is thrown up, it will come back. But if a satellite is thrown up with the escape velocity, satellite will not come back. It will revolve around Earth. And because of that great discovery, now we have GPS working. We should remember Isaac Newton whenever we work with Google Maps. So, Isaac Newton sat below an apple tree, apple fell on his head, and that is when he asked these 5 questions. What, where, when, why, how? If you and me sit below an apple tree, if apple falls on our head, what would we ask? We would ask one more or some more, right? Isaac Newton asked what, where, when, why, how? What is this force which is working on all the objects? Where it is working and how is it working? When is it working? It is working whenever an object is falling from top to bottom or whenever an object is thrown up. Where it is working on the surface of Earth. What, where, when it is working whenever an object is subjected to such forces, right? And what, where, when, why is it working? It is working, that means something is related to the Earth's movement. Earth is rotating around itself and Earth is revolving around Sun. Mysteriously, the centrifugal and centripetal forces are connected together. And finally, how is it working? He kept on exploring these natural laws, and due to which we have satellite communication today. So, what is knowledge now? Knowledge is asking these 5 questions. It is called as 4W1H rule. What, where, when, why, how. That is called logic. Through logic, if questions are asked and if the answers are obtained, then we understand, or when we comprehend, we remember, then that is cognitive domain. Now, until we understand whatever we don't know, when we come to know about it, that is called information. That means anything new that is going to be coming into the knowledge aspect is called information. Once you understand, once you remember, it will not remain information anymore, it will remain only knowledge. Okay. So this is the brief discussion about information theory. I sometimes digress from the main discussion because in many ways technology and nature are related fully. What is the meaning of technology? Technique plus logos. Technique means a method, logos means knowledge. Knowledge of the method. What is this method? method of engineering. Application of engineering science is technology. Methods are derived from engineering knowledge. What is engineering? Engineering is designing of engines that will help us in reducing the effort and increasing the efficiency, right? Any engine is going to reduce the human effort and it is going to increase the functionality or the efficiency of the human life. So that way we have electronics engines also in all our laptops and in mobile phones, in all our communication systems. We have electronic engines. Basically in the DSP domain, the processor chip is itself called as DSP engine, digital signal processing engine, because engine is the one which is going to reduce the human effort and it is going to increase the efficiency of the work as such. So engineering is again a branch of science. What is science now? Science is asking these 5 questions: 4W1H, what, where, when, why, how. Asking these questions, obtaining the answers, that is basically science. And gradually developing engines by means of the knowledge of science, that is engineering, and developing the methodologies for the development of such engines themselves is called technology. That is why initially you will have a Bachelor of Engineering or a Bachelor of Technology degree. Then you will have a Master of Engineering or a Master of Technology or a Master of Science degree also. Finally, you will have a Doctor of Philosophy degree in the educational domain. Why is the Doctor of Philosophy? Philos and Sophia. Philos means love, Sophia means wisdom, Doctor means the solution provider. In the sense, after a graduate degree, after a postgraduate degree, you will be able to provide solutions to the problems that are in life. Then such people are called as doctors, not just the medical doctors. Doctors are the solution providers for any given problem as such. Now, these doctors have to be loving the humanity or loving the society as such, and they should be wise enough to provide the solutions. That is the meaning of philosophy. So that way, all doctors have to be philosophers, all engineers also have to be gradually philosophers, because you will have to love the wiser part of life and you will have to be solution providers when you obtain a degree called Doctor of Philosophy. That is how education sector proceeds. So it starts with science, then in the middle there is engineering and technology, at the end it is philosophy. Again, I will keep digressing from the main part because anyhow this is a revision class. In the revision class it is always better to revise some of these basic concepts only, so as to appreciate whatever we are learning. Ultimately, whatever we learn should be applicable to our life. It is not just for the examination. Examination is basically for the purpose of evaluation, that's all. Some of you may like these examinations, some of you may not like these examinations, but without the examinations, how do we evaluate the learning part? Some of you may simply memorize the things which are taught and you may write on the answer scripts. Or some of you may try to understand all these things, then also you will write it on the answer scripts. Ultimately what happens is, whatever you write on the answer scripts, based on that evaluation will happen and based on that grading will be given. But at times, those people who have understood well, if they do not write it properly on the script, they may lose their marks also. Those who have not yet understood also, if they write it on the script well, they will get good marks also. Now there are these limitations with the examination system. But otherwise, how do we evaluate? We will have to evaluate each and every student and we will have to give grading. That will to some extent all the tests and examinations are your measurement of the written skills or the memorizing skills only. Now how to find out whether you have understood this or not? For that, in the laboratory sessions we have Viva sessions where we have a one-to-one interaction with you, where we try to assess whether you have understood the concepts or not. That part is there in the laboratory sessions as such. That is how we can actually find out whether students have understood or not. But ultimately, we have to be with this examination system as such, because ultimately we will have to evaluate multiple numbers of students in a short duration. It is not possible to conduct Viva for theory courses with all of you, right? It is possible, but it can be impractical, because we have to think about the time which is going to be utilized for the same process. And many times in the case of evaluation, we need evidences. We need evidential proofs for your grading. That evidential proof is possible only when it is written down. Otherwise, there is no evidence that we have evaluated you. So that way, examination system will remain like this also, even in future maybe. Maybe its pattern may change, its style may change. Instead of the regular theoretical discussion or theoretical writing, it may become more of MCQs. How they conduct GATE exams or aptitude exams nowadays, by means of giving you hundreds of multiple choice questions. But those questions are also not easy questions. You will have to work out, and out of the 4 choices, you will have to choose one of them. So these are all different methods of evaluation as far as examination is concerned. We cannot go away with that as such. Okay, let me now continue with today's class. I discussed at length about the information itself. I slightly digressed from the main topic. Now I will be coming back to the same topic. Now in the first module, we learnt about what is information, and we also learnt about why should we go for coding, because our method is basically completely digital communication era nowadays. Even in future also, it will remain digital communication only. The days of analog communication are almost gone. In future, there may not be analog communication at all. Even now, there are, to some extent, analog communication is still there. For example, landline telephones are still there now. Landline telephones are basically a tool for analog communication. But in future, landline telephones may be completely becoming obsolete. Not maybe, sure, that in the next 30-40 years, landline telephones will become completely obsolete. Analog communication itself may become completely obsolete. AM radio broadcasting and FM radio broadcasting may also become completely obsolete. Right now they are there, but in future they may become completely obsolete, because the communication system is completely going to be digital. The advantage of the digital domain is that we can convert any analog type of information into digital form. We can store it, we can process it. You have already studied DSP. It is easy to filter in the digital domain than in the analog domain. In the analog domain, we have many other problems such as noise and bandwidth issues, gain issues, phase margin, gain margin issues. All those issues are going to be overcome in the digital domain just by means of digitizing the information and then applying the digital filtering methodology. And it is very easy to store information in the digital format, and then in whichever way we want to manipulate or we want to process, it is possible. Storage of analog domain, analog signal is not as easy as the digital signal. We already had older methodology of storing analog information in the case of magnetic tapes. We used to use tape cartridges or even gramophone plates. Maybe in your generation you would not have seen the video cassette player. In my generation, I have seen the video cassette player, where the video cassette used to be a lengthy magnetic tape itself. Those days are gone nowadays. Even in the movie theaters now, there is no slide as such. Through the slide, each slide will have an image, and the image is rolled down in front of a light. Those days are gone. Even in the movie theater, complete movie is in the digital format. Both sound and video are in the digital format. So even the floppy diskette has become obsolete. Pen drive has taken its place. Except that now hard disk is still there. But even in the hard disk, the storage is digital format only. But the video cassette players or audio cassette players, they are all totally obsolete. So in the next 2 to 3 decades, there may not be any analog storage method also, analog communication method also. Still, students have to learn analog communication so as to understand signal. Signal will remain analog predominantly. Why? Nature itself is analog. Now, as it is revision classes, let me ask you a few questions and let me see how many will answer. You can try to answer by either unmuting or by putting your answer in the chat box. My question for today is, why sine wave is a fundamental wave in our signal processing domain? Right from the beginning, we will keep on using sine wave only for all those purposes. And why sine wave is a fundamental signal? Now, using the sine wave, we construct other waves. We use Fourier series, then we have Fourier transform, we have many other frequency transformations from time domain to frequency domain. And in that way, we go on. And we always analyze in frequency domain also, in time domain also. Let me come to that particular topic later on because it is beyond my particular course. This particular course is basically dealing with the digital domain, not with the analog domain. But my question for now is, why we take sine wave as the fundamental signal and later on all the signals are in the form of sine wave only. Later on we convert these analog signals into digital signals, and in the digital signals later on we code each information, and then in this course called information theory and coding, we are dealing with the information theory and coding only, completely in the digital domain. So let me proceed with the revision now. Meanwhile, if students know the answer, you can put the answer in the chat box about why sine wave is considered as the fundamental signal in our signal processing. Now, based on your answer, later on I will ask other questions related to the same question. So now, let me continue with this discussion. Module 1 is introduction. I have put some notes here. We have a concept called entropy. What is entropy? Average self-information expressed in bits per symbol. What is symbol? Symbol is a particular entity in the information theory where our information may be text. It may be voice converted into digital form. It may be text. Text is made up of characters or alphabets. Now, in such a case, if the information is text, that character or alphabet itself is called as a symbol. If the information is voice, let us say it is digitized. Now, that 0 and 1 itself is the encoded version of the voice. So, that way, our transmission of the information can be in terms of the symbols, depending upon the type of communication or depending upon the type of information. But as each symbol again contains bits only. For example, when you type on SMS, in the SMS you will have alphabets or characters. Each one is a symbol there. Now that each symbol will be expressed in an ASCII code or some other coding format also. Now all those codes are expressed in terms of bits. So entropy is the average self-information, means information contained when it was at the source itself. That is called self-information. Self-information is basically independent of any other information. For example, my name is a self-information. And somebody asks me my name is stored in my own memory. I need not depend on any other source for telling my name because it is stored in my memory. That is called as self-information. Okay, but if somebody asks me about any particular information which is related to someone else, then that can be a mutual information. Okay, so let us say my wife is also working and my wife is my wife is also working and I am also working. Imagine that way. If both of us are working professionals, now if someone asks us what is the net income of our family, then I should consider my wife's income also along with my income. If I do not know my wife's income as such now, imagine that she would not have disclosed her salary to me, then I will not be able to tell that unless I get that information from her. In such case, the net information is mutually dependent on both of our salaries. In that way, that time it is called as a mutual information, whichever is dependent. Of course, this is a crude example which I am telling you about mutual information. Otherwise, in technical terms, mutual information is basically the one which is received at the receiver when the transmitter transmitted it. I hope you remember the two circles, overlapping circles, where we defined many things there. So that is the accurate definition of mutual information. I am telling you all these things only to relate between self-information and mutual information. So self-information is an independent information which is only a particular characteristic of the source. Now when it is expressed in bits per symbol, that is called as entropy. Now we have already seen in the information theory that the amount of information is inversely proportional to its occurrence. That means less probable event will have more information, more probable event will have less information. We have seen that information when it is measured is following the logarithmic function. In the sense, sun rises in the east is no more an information, it is known. Sun sets in the west is no more an information, it is known. Now, this particular cyclone occurring in the Bay of Bengal was not information 1 month before. Now, because of this cyclone occurring in the Bay of Bengal, the eastern coast of India is affected. Even Bengaluru is also affected to some extent by means of the cloudy weather. And this was not an information 1 month before. Now that became an information, which means what? It was less probable. Now based upon the probability of information, we can say whatever is not known to us, it was less probable, that contains more amount of information. Now even this coronavirus was not an information last year in 2019. From December onwards, people started talking about it. December, January, February also, people kept on talking. People were talking that it is present only in China. That was information for them at that time. They never thought that it will spread all over the earth now. Now that was a completely unpredictable information at that time. That means the probability of this coronavirus affecting the whole earth, nobody thought about it. Now it has become probable now, because at that time it was a large amount of information for us when we came to understand that by the month of February or March, it is spreading all over earth by means of human beings only. That means lesser the probability, larger the information. That way information is following the logarithmic function. So now, if there are multiple symbols, now when there are multiple symbols, M is the number of symbols in the source alphabet. N is the number of symbols in the long message. I have listed here. Let me annotate this M now. Now the M is the number of symbols in the source alphabet. If we use English as the means of communication, English has got 26 alphabets. So that M can be 26 if we are using English language for typing our SMS or WhatsApp message or any chat message. Now that I equals 1 to M, that I equals 1 to M, that M is 26 in the case of our example of English language. So we know that information is inversely proportional to the occurrence. of the event, and information is basically logarithmic in nature. This we had seen in the first module. Information is basically logarithmic in nature. So how to measure the source entropy? When we have these many alphabets, we will have to measure the complete entropy of the information source itself. So we have seen, or we have defined entropy as the summation of all the symbols which are present in the source. If it is English language, A to Z, all the symbols present in the information source and their probability of occurrence multiplied by the reciprocal of its probability with the logarithmic function. So that way, source entropy H is equal to summation of I equals 1 to m of Pi into Lg of 1 over Pi. Just to make you recall, what is this Lg? Lg is log to the base 2. It can be L, N, it can be log, and it can be Lg. Log to the base n, here we use E. For log to the base n, here we use E. Log to the base, common logarithm to the base 10. Now this is a binary logarithm to the base 2. So we give a symbol Lg, which always indicates log to the base 2. We do not use natural logarithm, common logarithm, because our information storage is always in digital format. That is why it is log to the base 2. So in that way, we have this H is equal to summation of I equals 1 to m Pi Lg of 1 over Pi. And source entropy is now, how is it defined? Average number of bits per symbol in long messages when n is greater than m. Now, we have this particular formula. H is equal to summation of I equals 1 to m of Pi into Lg of 1 over Pi. That is one way of expressing the self-information average. Now, what is in the case of long messages, where when we type out a lengthy text matter, one paragraph will contain many sentences, sentence will contain many words, words will contain alphabets. So that way, when it is long messages, when n is much larger than m, which means a paragraph or a page in a book will contain very large number of alphabets. Of course, all of them are 26 alphabets only in the English language. But the total number of alphabets or symbols in a page in a book are much larger than 26. And a page will contain paragraphs, paragraphs will contain sentences, sentences will contain words, words will contain alphabets. So in such a case, when there are lengthy messages, we can compute the total amount of information divided by n, where n is the number of symbols in the long message. In that way also we can compute the source entropy. That is I total divided by n. All these concepts we had seen earlier. So first definition for source entropy is average self-information expressed in bits per symbol. Next, another way is average number of bits per symbol in the long messages when n is much larger than m, where m is the number of symbols in the source alphabet, n is the number of symbols in the long message. That is why we have two ways of expressing the source entropy. Now, what is the maximum average self-information, or what is the maximum source entropy possible? We had a derivation regarding the same, and H max is given as Lg of m. It is log to the base 2 of the number of alphabets present in the source, or number of symbols present in the source alphabet. This is maximum entropy for a given source. Otherwise, always the source entropy is less than Lg of m. H of s squared. Now, when we have an entropy of the second order extension, means let us say we have an alphabet A, again AA, AAA, then AB, AAB, AC, AAC, or ABA, ABB, ABC, ACA, ACB, ACC. This way also it can go on, right? We need not have a single alphabet in a word, right? We can have multiple alphabets in a word. Same way we can group all those things. In the digital domain, we are grouping all these alphabets as 8 bits in a byte, right? So there can be entropy of the second order or third order or fourth order. Then that is called h of s squared. Now h of s power n is given by n into h of s. It is simply n times that of the source entropy when it is taken as a single alphabet or single symbol. Same way, a symbol can be partitioned into 2 parts or 3 parts. A can be represented as A1, A2, A1, A2, A3, A1, A2, A3, A4. Each symbol can also be partitioned. Now that is what we represented as h of s dash. H of s dash is entropy with the partitioned symbols, and h of s dash is always greater than h of s. Means when the symbols are partitioned, the information content will be much larger than the symbol information when the symbol was not partitioned. For example, let us say I say one word symbol itself. Let me underline this word symbol. Now, this word symbols, we can find out the information content for the word symbols. That is h of s. This corresponds to h of s now. Now, instead, I can have s, y, m, b, o, l, s. We can have the information content for each alphabet here. Now that is what is h of dash. The whole word symbols is partitioned into s, y, m, b, o, l, s. Now that h of s dash will be always greater than h of s. In the sense, each alphabet will have information content which is defined as per its probability of occurrence at the source. Now when we have a summation of the information content for s, y, m, b, o, l, s, it will be much larger than the actual information content of symbols, the word symbols. Because the word symbols is nothing but a long message now, right? The word symbols is nothing but a message, which is a combination of alphabets. Now, naturally, if a sentence is broken up into words, now the words can be called partitions. Sentence is now the source. That is what is the meaning of partitions. If the book contains a complete page, it can be partitioned into paragraphs. Paragraphs can be partitioned into sentences. Sentences can be partitioned into words. Words are again partitioned into characters. That is the meaning of partitioning. Means when the symbols are partitioned, the information content is larger. Extension is something different. Extension means combination of symbols only in different order. Now finally, the efficiency of the source is given as h of s by h of s maximum. We know that h of s maximum is nothing but lg of m, log to the base 2 of the total number of symbols. And h of s is the information content for the present sequence or present message which is being transmitted or output. That is how we measure the efficiency. Now with this revision, let me stop today's class. Nobody answered my question. Why sine wave is the fundamental signal? I expect some answers from you in the next class because I am going to ask you the same question again in the next class. So now it is time to end today's class. See you in the next class. Take care. Take care of your health. Be healthy. Be happy. Keep studying. And answer to my question in the next class.
Sir, is it something related to periodicity, why sine is only used? Or is it something related to Fourier transform?
No. Fourier transform was invented by human beings only later on. But before Fourier transform, why Fourier chose sine wave itself? Periodicity is there. Periodicity we take it as a normal waveform. But my question is, why that sine wave?
Sir,
And
it's sine or cosine every time. Like we can choose either of those two.
yeah, cosine is only a phase shifted version of sine.
Yeah,
Integral
so
of sine, differential of sine, that's all. There we apply the calculus there.
so the question is why we should use only a
Only
sinusoidal
sine.
wave.
Yeah. Or else you think about why Fourier chose sine wave. Why Fourier represented everything in terms of the fundamental